Here we go. We are back. Today is the 10th of July, and it's been a couple weeks since we did one of these. Life, business, schedules, kids, spring break, but we're back. Yep, I'm here with the awesome, I always do that. I always go to the other side. Joy Morales. How are you doing, Joy?
Great. Glad to be back.
Great. Oh, me too. Me too. You know, I missed our conversations here. Welcome to I'm Rob Thompson, admin of the 411 and owner of S2 Technical, and we are here with ShiftHappens, your AI podcast. Our goal in this podcast is to talk about AI and the application of AI and the associated technologies in a way that you leave after you listen to this podcast with some actionable information and some action. You know, it's not theoretical. This is a results-oriented podcast. So that's our goal. And we were talking behind the scenes. What are we talking about this morning, Joy?
Well, we had an interesting meeting earlier in this week, and we were talking about search and how Google is going to change with AI in search. And you brought up a couple of points that I took notes on because this is going to apply to every business. I mean, you need to know how things are changing with the impact of AI. So I wanted you to bring that up again, and we talk about it because I knew it was changing, but I didn't have labels for it, and I didn't understand what the changes meant. So I thought that would be a good conversation for today.
Let's do it. All right. So many of you may have Googled something recently, and you've seen that Google is now putting let's call it generative AI. They are putting a synopsis underneath your search that says, "Hey, here's the answer to your question," right? And it's a paragraph format that answers the questions and provides source information for answering those questions. That is the direction that Google is moving. And the estimated impact already for that generative AI is said to be something on the order of 20 to 30% on SEO impact, meaning if you have been getting a lot of traffic via Google, then that could see a 20 to 30% downshift because of the launch of this type of generative AI response. What does that translate to? You need to pivot. You need to be thinking about your websites. If your website if you're using a lot of ChatGPT content, I was talking to somebody this morning who has an SEO person loaded their website up with a lot of generic content for keywords, right? Okay, that was a component previously that may have worked, but Google is evolving, and their algorithm is always evolving, and this is kind of a moving target thing. As Google evolves, we have to evolve. Because we evolve, Google evolves. And so here we are at this next stage that is being referenced as what's being called deep domain expertise. Okay, I obviously don't work for Google. Don't know exactly 100%. Well, I wish I did, sort of. Probably not. Yeah. We think, and Google has indicated that they're going to start rewarding, and truly are by the generative AI, deep domain expertise. So to appear and also distributed domain expertise. So what does that mean? Instead of your website being a holding point for generic data and a placeholder, if you want to show up on Google increasingly going forward, you need to have what we're calling deep domain expertise on your website. What does that mean? It means you need to put good content on your website. That's the translation. Good, deep content. If you go to robthompsonrealtor.com, you're going to see years worth of contextually important data that talks about the home purchase process. It talks about solar panels. It's frequently asked questions about solar panels. I've spent a lot of time over the years making blog posts that talk about the depth of the market and a lot of analytics and things like that. If you go to my website, you're not presented with a container that allows for you to search homes. That's not going to do anything for you. It's important to have, but it's not going to do. You're not going to show up on Google if that's all you have on your website going forward. Also, the better and more deep domain expertise you have, the better your chances of being sourced by Google in that generative AI response, right? And so if you go in there and you type, just to harp on the real estate, if you go and you type, what is the market like in Colorado Springs for real estate? There's a good chance that going forward, my website would appear in that generative AI statement, right? Because it's sourced. How cool would that be? Oh, well, according to Rob Thompson, a realtor in Colorado Springs, this is the state of the market. So that's kind of what we were talking about the other day is what do you need to be doing? You need to be thinking about this in a term of deep domain expertise, and how do you become an authority? Maybe that's a better way to put it. Your website, you need to be the leading authority for your profession in your region with content that backs that up if you want to appear on Google going forward.
Well, one of the things that I thought was interesting when we were talking is the difference between Google, Gemini, or generative AI, or however they're labeling it, and ChatGPT. So I think we need to address that a little bit too, because there's huge differences.
There is. So we were talking about this. If you talk to ChatGPT for a while, out of the box, if you're talking to ChatGPT, go to ChatGPT right now and type, hey, write me a 4-paragraph blog post about the importance of HVAC. Okay, and you hit enter. It's going to give you a 4-page blog post about the importance of HVAC. But there's going to be a flow to it, right? It's going to be almost symmetrical, right? In its content, and as you experiment and more you use ChatGPT and related tools, you can recognize the flow of that communication. One of the off-cited examples is ChatGPT always says in the last paragraph, in conclusion, right? So no human, not even myself, speaks like that, right? You might say in sum or wrapping it up, right? Those are human words, right? So if you are using ChatGPT blog posts out of the box, then meaning as they generate from one simple statement, that kind of content is going to start being penalized, actually, because Google's algorithm is going to start penalizing that. And you can't do this too. If you have folks out there who are telling you to just load your posts like this, interested in AI in Colorado Springs, you should call Rob and Joy because they know all about AI in Colorado Springs. AI in Colorado Springs is evolving quickly. So to learn more about AI in Colorado Springs, you should call Rob and Joy. That will actually, we think, and positive indicators indicate that that's going to actually penalize your blog, your website, because you're trying to game the algorithm. Well, the algorithm is smart enough to know it's being gamed, and it's going to penalize you for doing that. So what should you do in that specific example? Write about AI in Colorado Springs, and don't do it with generic content. Now, you can still use ChatGPT and Gemini, Claude, these other tools, those two, the latter two, write in a more human-oriented sense anyway. But you can train ChatGPT to talk in that manner, in a more human-oriented manner. And there's 2 terms you should be aware of called burstiness and perplexity. When a human speaks, when we speak, we say, we pause. Our sentences, we don't think in terms of, I'm going to speak the following sentences in a 7 syllables, followed by 5 syllables, followed by 7 syllables, followed by 5, right? We just say what we're thinking and then pause, and then we rush. Oh no, I had another thought, right? That's burstiness, right? Perplexity is the rhythm of how we speak. So you can train, and you can specifically tell ChatGPT, increase the perplexity of my speech of your speech by 10%. I like to tell it sometimes, pretend it's TARS from Interstellar, and I'll say, hey, your TARS from Interstellar, increase the humor by 15%, and it does that, right? It knows what you mean, and so you train that model to speak like you do. I have a model that has been I've been training for over 18 months now or so. Has it been that long? Geez. And I can go in there and I can say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Can you write me a blog post about this? And I always say, knowing what you know about me. Yep. It's going to do that anyway. But explicitly referencing, you write in my voice that we've been training for the last 18 months. And I'm here to tell you, you wouldn't know that it's not me most of the time, with that thread. So those are the kind of content and the investment of time and effort that you need to go to get that deep domain expertise and in a perplexity and burstiness form that will then start helping your blog.
Well, and that's really a game changer in terms of your website content, because after that conversation, I was thinking, how much data, it's going to be a fine line between getting people interested and providing the content that AI is looking for so you can rank. It's going to be a interesting balance to do that. And I just think in terms of search, you have to be aware of what Google is doing. And they control, as of now, they control it. And knowing that you have to update your website regularly, put new content in, throw in some statistics, show that you have, deep domain knowledge, is all things that maybe you didn't really, as a small business owner, have to think about regularly. And now you do.
You do. You do. Yeah, you do. You have to think about this stuff because what just by definition, what worked does not work is going to be an evolving target. There's a mental model I think a lot and talk a lot about called the OODA loop, and it's observe, orient, decide, act. And there's another thought process. So to that mental model, to be competitive, we constantly need to be observing, taking in these data points.
Yeah.
By case in point, we know Google has stated we are changing the way we're implementing generative AI responses. That's a data point. We observe. Okay, we orient to that. What does that mean? We know this is happening. They've stated it's happening. We need to orient and pivot our line of thinking to how do we then remain competitive with this change. If you say I'm not changing, then you're just, that's fine. Okay, don't change. But guess what? You're gonna fall off of Google, right? Because they are changing. And so we orient to that. We make a decision, and then we act, right? And then we iterate over that loop. It's called iterating over the OODA loop. And you constantly are evolving, constantly looking for those inputs, constantly tweaking. And there's another thought that by the time it takes you to say the word equilibrium, the moment has passed. There is no equilibrium. You as we're sitting here, text message comes in from, which I'm turning my phone down so I can't see it, with hey, issue. Well, shoot, okay, I had equilibrium for about 90 seconds. Now it's gone. So it's constantly evolving. What works isn't going to work tomorrow. In the micro. Strategically, though, you can't just sit and wait if you want to stay relevant. And yeah, it's really interesting.
Well,
diminishing returns. Go ahead.
It was funny because I thought about you this week. I was working out at the gym, and I haven't been one to use my phone on ChatGPT, and I know you do all the time. So I was listening to some podcast, and they gave me an idea, and I was like, oh, God, I don't want to forget it because it was a good idea. So I stopped the podcast, got my phone, and I was just going to use it as a note, like, don't let me forget. But I put in like a full thought and said whatever, and then I hit the enter key, and it came back with a response, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great that you can have instant work when you have a thought. And the power of that, because normally I'd be like, don't forget that, Joy. Well, then by the time I get done with the workout, go home, get in the shower, get in my office, blah, 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 it's gone, and I'm not going to remember it. And with this phone application and using it as your note taker, question, however, just is such a powerful tool for idea brainstorming. When you're not focused at work, when you can really think about things without the phone ringing, kids screaming, 6 things you got to get done before you start your day. And so I thought about you. I was like,
oh, thank you. That's awesome. I'm honored to have impacted that. You nailed it too, though, and that segues into what we're talking about too. It is so. If you haven't done this, folks, you're doing yourself a massive disservice if you don't go and create a thread like we're talking about, iJoy thread or whatever you want to call it, my alternate brain, right? And go in there and feed it as you're running, as you're at the gym, as you're pedaling, or as you're doing the rowing machine. Any errant thought that you have that you're like, hey, this resonates with me. go and tell, hey, literally, I'll get on my app and I'll say, hey, ChatGPT, the awesome robot overlord, and I always give it compliments, and I will say, hey, Joy told me today this quote that I really like. I'm just making a note. I want you to be aware of that, right? And and that's what I will literally say, and they'll say, okay, got you, Rob, and then if you have time, I'll sit there and unpack it and I'll say, so that quote, let's talk about, and I'll literally say this, let's talk about how that quote and resonates with me and why. And it will make connections that, you can't make on your own. You just
Totally.
can't, unless you're optimized and firing on all cylinders, which we know we aren't. As we're chatting here, my daughter came in and got a bowl of cereal, right? So I'm slightly distracted, right, for a moment. And ChatGPT never gets distracted, right? And I was always thinking, and I said this morning to somebody, that if you think about it like this, that model that you build, if you call it the rational you, right? The rational you model knows the rational you better than you know the rational you, right? It's so cool as a tool. Why is this all important in what we're talking about? Because through that too, you can increase your domain expertise, right? Like without this tool, I would never have, literally probably never have learned about the adjacent possible framework, and or the concepts of the illusion of communication, right? I don't have the mental bandwidth to. Here's maybe a better way to say all this is building that rational model of you. It gives you a academic doctorate level expert on topics that help you become that domain expertise, right? And if you think it doesn't apply to you, you're wrong. If you're an HVAC company owner, uh, these things matter too to your company. And this isn't all a philosophical debate. Like I'm a programmer, right? So this learning about these things has helped me learn about frameworks that help me become a more effective programmer and business person, right? So which all is mixed up in there. Is that coming through? Am I
Well,
making sense?
and the bottom line is, for business, you have to be able to adapt and change because you can't be stagnant. Where you used to think, okay, I've got this set, I've got my website done, I've got this in place, I'm good. Well, there is no more, I'm good. Things are changing and evolving, and you have to meet the demands of those changes to have a chance to be seen. I mean, I guess that's the biggest takeaway when we were talking about it. I was like, gosh, I'm really happy with my website. I mean, I do make changes, but now I'm going back and reviewing it and saying, from the lens of Google AI or Gemini AI, what would be the information that it could gain? And you have to be nimble enough to change.
Maybe even a more succinct question would be this: does my website reflect that I am the domain expert in my region for this topic, or the
Yeah.
domain expert in the world? If I'm an HVAC company owner, I'm going to make my website the authority for HVAC in the world. That not just a website that has a web form where I can submit for work, right? That is not going to appear on Google anymore, or it's going to appear so far down as to be irrelevant.
Yeah.
Uh, if I'm the domain expert, maybe for that service, let me clarify, HVAC, you probably just want to be the domain expert in your region, unless you are going to get into the referral business. Do you want to be getting HVAC leads from Ontario that you can then refer to, which is a whole nother business model, right? Um, you know, uh, so yeah, you ask yourself the question: does my website reflect the domain expertise in the sphere that I want to operate in geographically?
I
If you
think next week we're going to talk about what that actually means, because now
Okay,
people can think about, am I presenting my business as an expert to the level? But next week, let's talk about what that actually means, like
okay.
step by step, to present yourself as an expert. What are some of the things that you should include and get specific?
Just sounds like a plan to me. Let's do it. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and thanks, Joy. Good to see you again. And
You too.
we'll be back in the. So we'll aim for next week and talk to you then.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.